it unifies the fields because it uses Einstein field equation instead of quantum theory, and it's quite disturbing to the standard model. So I was very surprised to receive an award. I was very glad, though.
How many people are working on that, on the same kind of theories? Or you out there all by yourself?
Well, I've been out there by myself for a long time.
Yes, you have.
Yes, but
sometimes with a noose around you, right?
That's right. It can get pretty hairy out there, but I think that more and more people are warming up to the idea. I mean, think about it, George. When you think of an atom continuously spinning with an electron going at near the speed of light, I mean, it starts to look more and more like a mini black hole, a very energetic, singularity, and I think that actually is the correct answer. Now, whether or not we can write the physics to describe it appropriately, I think is the crux, and it's taken us a very long time to understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no question about that. Well, stay with us. When we come back at the top of the hour, full hour of phone calls left for Nassim Haramein. And then in the last hour of the program, Joshua P. Warren joins us with his paranormal moment as well. And I invite you all to go to Nassim's website, which is the renaissanceproject.org, linked up at coasttocoastam.com. I'm George Norrie. Don't touch your dial. We'll be right back. Okay, here we are. We'll take your phone calls. Nassim Haramein, our special guest tonight. He's also got a DVD called Crossing the Event Horizon, Rise to the Equation. Tell me about that, Nassim.
Well, it's a 4-DVD set that goes through all the information relevant to, a layman, description of the theory and all the research I've done in ancient civilization and in various fields of expertise. And it describes the link between all these things, the link between advanced physics and ancient knowledge, and even, the possibility that we're being talked to by crop circle and taught about geometry and so on, and many different other things are involved. It's almost 8 hours long. There's with the special features, the discussion there about the sun and ancient texts from the Vedic tradition and so on.
All right, let's go to the calls. We'll pick it up by, first of all, going to Santa Barbara, California, west of the Rockies. Hey, David, you're on.
Thank you for taking my call, George.
Sure, David.
I've gone to your website and read it years ago, or a year ago at least, I think now, and really looked at a lot of your videos on the net. So I'm pretty familiar with what you've done. I've been studying physics for a few years now, daily, for several hours a day, and so I got a pretty good grasp on alternative sciences, which I think is really where it's working. It's really working, and you're really at the kind of the top of the field there. Now, I'm serious. I really do believe that. There's a question that I have for you that I haven't been able to get an answer for with many of the scientists that I know that are also in the alternative science. And then I got something I want to let you know about, too. And anyway, I was wondering if you believe that three space that's the three dimensions or the quantum vacuum or whatever you want to call it, that ether that's out there. There's a million different words for the same thing, and that's one of the problems. We don't have the same language as the rest of the physicists.
Right.
Now, this stuff is actually collapsing into it's collapsing in through the atom, or the protons, the neutrons, whatever else is in the atom into another dimension. Is that what you think is taking place?
Actually, two things. One is I appreciate the comments and your background. It's great to hear that. And this is why I call the vacuum. You could call it the plenium. You could call it the chi. You could call it, like you're right. There's so many different names for the same thing. But I'm confined to using the word vacuum because when I say the vacuum to a physicist, specifically to a quantum physicist, then in general they know what I'm talking about. And I'm talking about this density of the vacuum that's called the Planck's density, which is 10 to the 94 or 10 to the 93 grams per centimeter cube. It's extremely dense. It's more dense than all the stars in the universe put together in a centimeter cube of space. If you did that, if you took all the stars in the universe and you stuck them in a centimeter cube of space, you'd have about 10 to the 55th grams per centimeter cube. So you'd still be 38 to 39 orders of magnitude less than the density of the vacuum that actually is present at the atomic level, and that's been measured in laboratory using the Casimir effect and other things. And so basically, yes, I believe that it is collapsing, that actually the vacuum density, the energy of the vacuum is what produces the phenomenon that we call the atom. And it's because it's moving towards singularity, and through these movements towards singularity, as I said earlier, you can think of it as a fluid, as a little vortex that's being generated as it's being sucked towards singularity. And that dynamic produces the magnetic and electromagnetic fields, the electron cloud, and all the dynamics we see in the atom, and which is 99.99999% space. And when we think about it this way, then we start to realize there's a relationship between the center of the system and the edge of the system. So I don't believe it's going in another dimension as it collapses. I believe that actually it's feeding back, because as it spins towards singularity, it increases in velocity. So then centrifugal forces eventually and Coriolis forces take over and pulls it out at the equator of the system, and that's how I ended up with a double torus structure that you can see on my website. And in that double torus structure, information is moving in towards the center and then radiating out from the equator and moving back into the center, and in a continuous feedback loop that is the source of this information network which continuously learns about itself.
There you go. David, follow up on that?
Yeah, I do. That's pretty much exactly my view too, except that I thought a portion of it might be collapsing into another dimension. Now, the one thing that you may not be aware of, because it's not published, is that there's a scientist out there that's a friend of mine, that is actually through very carefully controlled electrical fields been able to pop a proton from the quantum vacuum. And if you can pop one proton out of a quantum vacuum, then you can eventually pop a planet or a galaxy.
Very interesting. I'm not aware of that experiment, and that I believe that this is actually possible in our future. Like I said, if everything emerges from space and returns to space, then it is possible that if we understand the dynamics, and I believe the dynamics have to do with spin and velocities, angular momentum, that when we understand those dynamics, we can produce material directly out of the structure of space.
Nassim, I'm always fascinated at how incredible people have gotten into the fields that they're in. How did this happen for you? Interested in science when you were a little boy? What happened?
I was interested in science when I was a little boy, but I was actually very curious about the natural world, about our existence here, and how it all worked. And I wasn't doing so great at school, so I didn't continue to explore that in the standard system of schooling. I had to do much of my studying independently, some 20 years of physics independently, and that allowed me to develop in a way in which I could think my own thoughts, come to my own conclusions, and develop new views that are not necessarily inside the box that is taught inside the institutions.
Very good. Next up, we go to Atlanta, Georgia, east of the Rockies. Jonathan, go ahead, John.